Nice. Does not sound that great. I have to turn this up a little bit. Let's try that out. Great. I have to turn this up a little bit. Let's try that out. There we go. Another voice test. 1, 2, 3. Another voice test. 1, 2, 3. Looking good. Oops, actually kind of wanted that. Get that. That was wasted motion there. Rough. Chop out the pat. Do I remember? It's this. Yep. Nailed it. Put that over there. And we'll send that over here. There we are. Excuse me. So, doing a little bit of eLisp work here. This is Baloon. So, I have a very odd use case, and I'm semi-automating some reports, and not really allowed to mess with the format that the reports are created in, which is, big surprise, Excel spreadsheets. So the Excel spreadsheets get to be generated or are already made, and they take data, whatever the data points are, as inputs, but they take them in slightly different formats. So I wind up retyping things for entering this information every single time, and that's no good. So as much as I would like to closure something like this, Emacs is very strangely the best choice, because I need a little bit more OS integration to get it so that I can manage kind of interacting with the operating system platform independent. So whatever box it's running on, as long as Emacs can run on it, I'm writing something that's a basic interface for inputting the data first, and then processing it in a intelligent way, and then presenting it back to you in the different formats that are required for you to paste it into the different Excel spreadsheets. So the workflow that I'm going for is you enter the data in random order, or more or less random order, because the data is presented in sheets, and the sheets may or may not have all the information on them. So sometimes they're blank, sometimes they've got one piece of information, sometimes they've got 20. So tracking all that input so that you can manage all that input no matter what sheet you're on. And then after you input the data, one of the design goals is that you only input the data once, so you never have to retype something. Incorporating autocomplete will come later. That'll be a neat little thing. And since we're writing it in a Lisp, it doesn't really matter, because I can very easily add stuff to it later, because functions can call functions can call functions. Really the best thing. That's super cool. But since I'm not doing it in Clojure, and I'm doing it in eLisp, or Emacs Lisp, it is very apparent what is lacking, or what is very apparent what Clojure did correctly, because there's just a lot of cruft, and that's there's a lot of stuff in there for no real reason. The idea that you have this, you're creating this data structure. As an example, this information's coming through, and then you've basically got an A list, which is more or less a hash map. Once you get that hash map in, or A list, you request the information from it by using assoc. Where are we? There it is. So assoc. And this is totally fine, kind of, so long as you're running G on prod. Yeah, that's right. That should be executing. assoc G on prod. No, whatever. So this is our example data. And let me just let's do BSP. That's Norm? What is Norm doing on this? This might not be okay. There we go. Right, so you get this assoc. So this is how you're pulling the array, basically, or pulling the key value, and you're like, okay, here I am pulling the key value with this assoc request, and then once you assoc it, what you get out of it is this. You get like the key back and the value, and you get it nested within a list already. So you pull it out with a car and a cutter, just like for fun, I guess. Yeah, I think it's cutter. Yeah, and then you get that, and then you can actually assoc correctly for like, let's do PN on the first one. Oh yeah, we need to car again. And then once you've asocked one more time, like one additional time for your PN, your product number, what's come back is still more information than you really needed. And I understand like the argument for this, that like, well, it's supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be so that you can build your own, right? But like, okay, like these are basic data structures. Well, obviously, clearly they're like primitives, but like, you want me to use the data in this way, which means you want me to access it. And something as simple as pulling a value from an A list, it just gets so crufty with all these layers of stuff. And I got this ASOC, and here's my return, which means I'm going to have to catter it one more time. This is like one motion. I should be getting like the first item in the list, and then get the PN. That's it. That's where Clojure really stands out. You can tell where they kind of pulled it apart. Yeah, I mean, this was something that like the dude that made it, was his name Rich Hickey or something. Like, that dude knew Lisp because he knew all the annoying parts. And you can use keywords as functions. You can use the data type itself. Like you can use the vector as a function. And then of course you can ASOC, request a key bit of information from it off the keyword. Like, all of that stuff is like one line. And like, you can nest the keywords to like navigate down layers. It's ridiculous. It's really great. And something you just kind of come to expect from the modern languages. And then you wind up in Lisp and you're like, isn't there a cleaner way to do this? I mean, yeah, the correct answer to that is to just like make your own everything. And I did actually make something just to reduce the cruft here. It's not a very well named utility here. Yeah, so this is, again, not very well named, but it just does a catter off the ASOC, just because it's too much cruft. Like, why? I get if you're like Alan Kay, like writing small talk, and you're like, all right, we're gonna build this from the ground up, brick by brick, and we're gonna make the tiniest, most simple, most correct functions possible, and then we're just gonna nest them forever, all the way up to the top of the pyramid. And then he went like flexed really hard, and then like his shirt flew off, and he was like, whoa, and then a sunburst was behind him, and a halo. He's kind of awesome. But like, I'm not there. I'm not that right now, and I don't. Like, I guess if you're building something big, then you can be like, I want to control every minute detail. I mean, maybe I shouldn't be complaining. The code's reusable. It's just crufty. It's crufty for no reason, and I think Clojure proves that. But it's still fun. It's still fun and very different to think about this type of flow, because you're like, when you're functionally programming, you're doing an inverted imperative programming. Like, everything's from the inside going out, rather than you like looping into something. I still need to figure out how to do nested anonymous, or anonymous recursion within a function. Otherwise, you're just like making these you've got like 100 functions just so you can nest each one of them. And if you want a slightly different output from it, then it's a whole nother flow of functions, and that's, guess what, it's its own function too. So you're like making like hundreds of functions. So I'm kind of breaking the idiomatic way here. At least I think so on eLisp. But I'm just trying to keep the flow. I'm trying to keep the flow going. But it is very strange to code like this. Yeah, crufty. Like there's repeated code in here. I could probably clean this up a bit, except for this bottom part. There were bits that I broke out here about validation, I think. Yeah. Valid product number. Determining the validity of an input, and you can get this, and you pass it directly from the input, and you define that input in the list creation, which calls the actual, like, it's so weird. Here's you reading the string and getting input from the user. This is where you're getting input from the user. And you take this input, and then you check it, make sure it's not empty. And if it is empty, you call the same function. So it starts all over. And you make this little recursive try again thing that just keeps going until you get a valid entry, and then it returns the uppercase of the entry. And then that comes through as a list item, like just as a straight string. Then you do the same thing here. You find whether or not this is a valid entry for whatever that is. And it's really cool, but it's really weird. Oh man. So there's actually another part that I wanted to work on, probably before I started talking about Alan Kay taking his shirt off. Oh man. Way too many of his speeches. Where was I? Oh yeah. There's kind of an interesting part on one of the reports that I want to see if I can work through. So let's see what we can do. Should probably be, oh, and in case anyone's wondering, running the what are they called? The iris today. So we get that. Boy. See, very nice, very shiny. And it is a split, but I'm not technically splitting it right now. This is where it's comfortable, Signum style. I'm gonna see if I can get some of this slight tenting here, because this is slightly elevated on the inside. Very comfy. It's like I'm keyboarding nothing at all. Is that all right? Okay, so go ahead and get us a function. guess we'll start with user input, although I should probably be messing with this in a scratch buffer. This is fine. So let's do let's just there's this guy, actually it's this code exactly. This guy makes a tic-tac-toe game, live codes a tic-tac-toe game for Emacs, and it's a very cool video. I like to copy syntax because I don't like to make typos. And I don't like to debug either. So get an editor that allows you to copy and move stuff around and use snippets and do stuff fast. The less you type, the better. So, oh yeah, so like when he does this, he just kind of like riffs on what he's gonna do. Is like, well, in this area I need like a function that does this, so he just calls that function, and then later he writes the function. It's just like, it's like pure logic. It's like function that changes this into that, yeah, and then function that turns the other thing into the first thing, yeah. Just figuring it out in his head, the architecture. And then after that, he goes in and fills in those actual functions and writes them. But he names them first. So that's kind of, let's see if I can do that here. It's a neat idea. See if I remember. Complete. Turn Paredit back on and see how long I can stand it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to have to do is get the input of the top shelf. There's a, I've got keys basically, and some keys will be in there, some keys won't. Sometimes there will be one key, sometimes there will be 5, and I'm going to populate a chart which has those keys along the top, but only some of them, and only some of the time, and in a random order, depending on production, right? The trends and the order that things come through. And since the part numbers are generated, you don't have a fixed set of part numbers. So you have a list of stuff that you don't have a definite, start and finish on, and you can't, and it's out of order. So what we're going to do is take the existing sheet points as input. So whatever their order is, whatever's already on there, it'll either be included in our list, or if it's not in our list, we'll just add it to the end. And then you'll have an updated list to paste back in there. So that means we're going to get current, what would I call it? Column header? Yeah. So get the current column headers. And then compare columns to compare the columns to today's data. So that's broad, yeah. And yesterday's, I'm all over the place with style here, so forgive me. There we go. Maybe input that's going to return for something. So we'll probably want to pass that through. Actually, so you can see how I've got the got this, and then I'm like passing this stuff to it. This data that I said, you know, I'm passing the today's data, but also I've got the data that I already got up here. I can just take this function and put it right here, and it returns the variable as output, and everything just nests nicely into itself. And that is super weird and super awesome about Lisp, or Lisps. The cool thing about Clojure is you can have multi-threads going so that you can have stuff running and then activate it and then like drop into it and poke variables and touch things and swap out functions. First time Isthmus. This is my first time seeing Emacs. I'm curious about your standing desk. I use a converted hospital tray table. Yeah. Hospital tray table. One of those wheelie ones or one of the wall mount ones? Because I had thought about one of the wall mount ones for a while. I really want a Signum 3.x. I don't think I have. I'm all sold out of Signum 3.1s, so 3.0 is the way to go. Still got some left here. There we are. The majesty. Very nice. Gonna have another run coming up, I think. They're selling like things that sell a lot. Yeah, Emacs is weird. Wheels under, over, cantilevered over the bed, yeah. That's pretty cool. Does that mean you have it as in a seated fashion, or is it a standing desk? This was after some heavy freelance work. This was an investment. This is probably the most expensive thing the business owns. I think this was $250. But it's not electronic, you know, I'm a simple guy. It's pneumatic. It's got a little lever over here. And I've weighed it down sufficiently with clutter and stuff that I kind of have to push up on the desk when I'm lifting it, but it works fine. It's solid. And for those days when I'm, you know, I had it basically as a standing desk, and I got rid of the chair after that. But when I did get sick, I did drop it down to for sitting, just because I wasn't feeling standing the whole day. So it is convenient and it is nice, and really the big sell about the standing desk is not that it is a standing desk. It's really the ability to adjust the height to within, an inch or so, to be able to make those minute adjustments, because that's where you get the optimal comfort. That's where you really start to get the benefits of it. The other thing is just the activity of standing. I find it useful creatively, I guess. There's something about just kind of the physical motion. I'm usually shifting my weight. My knees will get kind of locked in, and I'll bend them and shift from back and forth. I do find that it helps a lot to get, for really long sessions, get some comfortable shoes. Not running shoes, or yes, running shoes. Not work shoes, like not boots, that kind of thing. That makes a big difference. What would also be pretty good is to get one of those standing pads. That would probably be just as good, really. It's something they get on a factory floor or something like that. They're very squishy. And I'm not sure how much support your foot needs. I don't know. I'm usually on a carpet, and I'll get some cheap pair of sandals on, or some proper running shoes if I'm going to be up for a while. Yeah, kind of wobbly. Yeah. More engaged is a good way of putting it. Definitely more flowing. I've got a number of coding live streams up, and there's I put in what are they called? I put in timestamps on just weird garbage I'm doing, and I'm just dancing around, pointing at things. I don't know. It's definitely more active and definitely more flowing. The more of your brain you can activate, in my opinion, the better things work out. The better they tend to work out. It's kind of why I get the music playing in the background, even though I'm probably going to get copy struck on it. But I don't care if Akira the Don gets monetization on this video. He deserved it. Deserves it. It's high quality. He's a good guy. He's got clout. Alright. So compare piano playing. Yeah. I was worried. Piano players, I think, have a increased chance for repetitive stress injuries and carpal tunnel. It definitely takes people. It seems like a genetic disposition kind of thing. Some people do it for a few years and they have problems, and some people do it forever and have no problems. Some people smoke a pack a day for 40 years and never get lung cancer, and some people do it for 4 months and they got it. Musicforprogramming.net. That seems interesting. Oops, I missed you. I think I just restarted it. Unacceptable. Net, I think it was. Yep. Interesting. Well, me and my terminal, I definitely like the input. I definitely like the interface. In fact, I kind of love the interface. I'm a little worried about clicking on anything like this. I promise you, YouTube will block your video worldwide for 2 seconds of something copyrighted. It's unbelievable. Ergonomic Piano. My God. That's the problem, is there's nothing ergonomic about a piano. The stretches that you have to do, the long reach, it's anti-ergonomic. Yeah, you can't. And I'm talking about something that you would do with that would have to be synthesized. Physically, I'm not sure. You know, a piano barely fits in a piano itself. Dataset designed it. Yeah. The DJs. Alright, now where was I? What was this? This. Nah, it's fine. Yeah. Saxophone is definitely an ergonomic instrument. However, a saxophone doesn't have nearly the range of a piano. Learning Ruby, do you think Emacs is worth a look? So, if you're learning Ruby, I would use whatever you're most comfortable with to start out. You do not want to you don't want to do what I'm doing and switch from, you know, switch text editors and languages at the same time. It's just a bit too much of a strain. Learning Ruby, learn Ruby, write in Ruby, think in Ruby, get to the point where you can, like, you're pretty comfortable. And once you're comfy and cozy in Ruby, then start thinking about Emacs. Likewise, you can learn Emacs first. You know, use Emacs for text editing and stuff like that, and get comfortable with it, and then add Ruby to it. Emacs is hard to learn. It's especially hard to get started with. But so is Vim. I mean, it all just kind of depends. Doesn't really matter what you use, so long as you don't use Pico. Emacs does a lot of cool stuff. Ruby has really good integration. Emacs has really good integration with Ruby. So those are features that you can use. Depending on your style, you might be more comfortable with a GUI. I don't know what is commonly used for Ruby, but you know, Atom and Sublime and all them probably have some really solid Ruby plugins, and probably get a REPL in there somewhere. REPLs are super cool and important. They really speed things along, especially when you're a novice just messing around with stuff. Just makes it easier to troubleshoot and to debug. I say that as someone who completely screwed up this function. Where was it? Yeah, this one. I completely screwed up this function. I had all the logic out of order, and it just made no sense, and I kept troubleshooting it, and everything got worse every time I troubleshot it. And that's when you know you need to take a break. So I put on my running shoes and ran around the block a few times. And came back in. And then when I came back in with the, after you clear your head, I got in and looked at my code, and I was like, what the heck was I writing? It looked like I mashed my face against the keyboard and just rubbed it around. I motorboated the keyboard. That's what it looked like. It was bad. So I just scratched it and I wrote a whole new one from the beginning. And surprise, it worked. Go figure. Yeah, it's one of those things is you can't. I am a fan of the Pomodoro technique because you have to take the breaks. I'm someone who will frequently skip the breaks, and if you skip the breaks, you make mistakes. If you skip the breaks, you make mistakes. And if you make mistakes, your time to troubleshoot goes up exponentially, as does your frustration and anger. It also severely increases your likelihood of just saying nuts to this whole thing and just dropping it. So take the breaks. Definitely take the breaks. Sublime in VS Code, RubyMine. Yeah, I'd probably see if Sublime has really good support. I hear very good things about Sublime. I'm an old hacker anyway, so everything's terminal for me. Everything's text. Everything's, I don't want graphical displays. Although this Emacs is technically graphical, which is kind of weird, but whatever. It renders all these graphics live, so that's kind of odd. But there's like the purity of the text. Also like the speed. Well, I'm very speedy anyways. This keyboard demonstrates. I don't like to wait. But yeah, I hear good things about Sublime. I hear it has pretty good Ruby support. Ruby's pretty popular. Not quite as popular as Python, although I think everyone and their grandma is trying to learn Python. Or someone's trying to get everyone and their grandma to learn Python. It's a very good first language, I think. But Ruby is more powerful, is my understanding. Try to stay away from the frameworks until you get the basics down, until you can write in pure Ruby. So don't run to Ruby on Rails. Yeah. Just think libraries, not frameworks. Spend all your time learning a framework and then it goes bad, or it becomes a mess, or there are lawsuits filed, and that's when stuff starts to go wrong, and then your talent and all of your knowledge for that thing is severely devalued. There's nothing wrong with learning a pure language. A language straight. I sit there and say, well, you should learn Django. Flask is a bit better, is my understanding, but Django is heavy. It's hard to tell what's going on in Django. I didn't like it, but like I said, I'm an old hacker. That might just be a preference thing. I'm gonna write SketchUp scripts. ship script. I like SketchUp. I wasn't familiar with the Ruby API it had for it. Like I said, I usually find myself with text, so OpenSCAD is where I found myself when I need to do any kind of CAD work. Just because text, lol. I don't know. I'm just a curmudgeon. Where was I? Where am I? Yeah. So we compare the columns to today's data, which is from here to there. Ugh. Actually, I thought this was going to be kind of weird. So let's do this first. Default. Column headers. We're going to have to start with user input. So that would be set to something else. So like am I gonna need this later? Because I can give it a local scope and make it, you know, functiony, no side effects. But nope, not gonna need it again. Okay. So we will read our current string, column data. That should come in as something like I think it reads as a tab. I'm gonna paste that in. How would that look? Let's go over here. Neighboring office. This should paste similarly. JK. There we go. Go back here. No, not like that. Oh wait, you didn't copy it, did you? Wait. Copy. Back. There we go. We have this tabular character. That's the interesting part of this transition. So if you don't have that tab character in there, then when you paste it in, it doesn't paste correctly. Yes. Keyboard. Hello. my chat? What's wrong with my chat? Oh, there we go. That's weird. Keyboard is an iris. Iris with the number row caps removed. That's Numberwang. And trackball is a M570. Yep. It's a M. Oh, no, that's not right. This one, yeah. Yes, through sketch with text input in the application's Ruby console, I think. See, that's what usually happens is whenever I'm finding any kind of input. Oh, the vertical mouse. Yeah, get that. This is a Evoulent Vertical mouse, and it is pretty weird and wild, and I like it. When I'm at a sitting desk, I definitely like the vertical mouse movement. What's kind of strange about this mouse, and takes some practice, is when you move a regular mouse around, you kind of get this fine motion of your wrist, and you also get this fine motion of your fingers. Like you can do just little tiny motions with your fingers and little motions with your wrist. But when you get this vertical mouse, all of that's kind of gone, because your fine motion is like this, and you can't like move your fingers in and out to get that fine motion. So you're kind of mousing with your elbow and kind of offsetting with your wrist a little bit. Technically, it's a lot better. You know, anything that you can do with a wrist brace on is gonna be better for you. So you're not bending the wrist, you're not doing all that. My favorite thing about this mouse is that the click is extremely light, and I had no idea how heavy this click was and how heavy some of the other mice clicks are until I got this mouse that was really, really light. And you can tell that they spent a lot of time and effort on the ergonomics here, because the mouse clicking is terrible for you. It is just terrible. Usually it's also performed much harder than is necessary. So having a mouse that first of all stands up so your wrist almost has to be straight. Again, it takes a little bit of practice to do it with your elbow, because you're kind of aiming with your forearm and your elbow. But the click is just so light and easy and effortless. It makes up for it. It doesn't make up for it. It's great. Anyways, it just adds it. It's icing on the cake. Totally worth it. Totally worth it. The trackball was kind of a test. There are like odd days where I'll kind of feel a little bit of weirdness in my thumb, and it's not pain directly, but it just feels a little bit odd, and I kind of stretch it out and take a break, and that's fine. But I haven't developed any issues with it, but I know that I do like using it a lot more. I like the flick, the fact that you can just kind of flick the ball and it moves. You know, the mouse shoots across the screen with high mouse acceleration. Just makes it a lot easier. Yeah, it's hard to. I mean, this is easily one of the best trackballs on the market right now, and the fact that Amazon has them for $20 is unbelievable. It has the additional buttons on it. The battery life's ridiculous. I do find that the ball gets a little bit gummed up. Maybe like once or twice a week, but not seriously that you have to clean it. I just kind of, I just flick it back and forth and just kind of work it loose. And then once I do that a few times, it's back to like you flick it and it does like an extra spin and a half. A very good bearing system in here. You know, it's got the hole in the bottom for any dust or lint or whatever comes out the bottom. Very good tool. Before I had the vertical mouse and I had a regular mouse, I used my mouse very little. I avoided it a lot. I avoided it very much. And I used my keyboard mouse controls, which the keyboard mouse controls on this Iris are bad. QMK's got nothing on Easy AVR's mouse controls. However, QMK has a lot of other features and lots more support, so it's technically better software, but the mouse movement. So I was using my Easy AVR to control the mouse much more. But once I got the trackball, I was using the trackball a lot more. It was just about speed. I was here, and then I'm flicked, and then I'm there. I basically just have to change context real quick. Yeah, variety is important. There's a mouse on. It's called the. I think it's called the MX Master, and it's kind of like this one. It's less, sweeping design, which I don't know if I feel good about. But it has a feature where it has two angles. It sits at a normal angle, a flat angle, and then you can pop it up so that it sits at, increases the angle like 20 degrees, and you can flip between that. And someone had written in the reviews that sometimes they'll use it, half a day in one way, and then they'll flip it and then use it half a day in the other way. And the idea that you can, you're reducing that repetitive strain, you're reducing the same motion over and over, the same muscles, the same action, the same wear on your carpal tunnels. All of that stuff is just better. I'm using this keyboard. I don't like that it doesn't have this complete bottom row. I miss this button. I don't know if you can see that. I miss this button, the one that's on this bottom row but out in the corner, because I use that on my Signum. I hit that like that one right there. But yeah, I deal with it, and I like it until I kind of get sick of it and go back to the Signum, or maybe I left the Signum at work or something, and this works well. I just don't like wires on a travel board. I find it annoying. But yeah, switch it up. Try different stuff. It is your health, And if you make a living with your keyboard, if you make a living typing, it's your livelihood. It's what put foods on. Yeah, nice. It's what puts food on your table. And if you can't do it, or it's too painful to do it, you gotta figure something else out. It's not a good place to be. Also, when people think that it's more like it hurts when I type kind of thing, like, well, don't, it hurts when I do that. Well, just don't do that. But when I get these it's RSI flare-ups or something like that, it's just like either a dull ache that's constant, no matter what you're doing. You don't even have to be typing. You can't be like, well, I'm going to take a break. You just wake up with the pain. And then, of course, you get the sporadic, stabbing in the hand. It's not fun. And it's not something that It's not something I want anyone to deal with. That is part of the design. Part of why I designed. Well, I made it, and I made other models, and I made them for myself. But when people started talking to me about them, I started figuring out how to get them for sale, and I started figuring out how to make them inexpensive, because I'm cheap. The idea that the keyboard kind of is the case and everything's built around it, and all you need is switches, microcontroller, and caps. I think it's a good way to do it. The expensive mechanical keyboard thing just bugs the heck out of me. And I think the Signum is a antithesis to that. You know, it looks unfinished. It's all PCB only, inexpensive. If you don't mind, well, the keyboard company has MX Blacks for Harvest. They sell for 19 cents, a little 19.6 cents per switch. And if you want to harvest switches and you can desolder, cheap and easy way to get switches. And I think the best deal on keycaps is Geek Keys. They've got blanks for like $15, $15.50. You can get into a mechanical keyboard, and even now an ergonomic mechanical keyboard, customizable to your hand. Everyone's out there breaking the bank on brass plates. Yeah. I don't know, lol. I like ugly things. That's why I like my face. Alright. My son is up and complaining about something, so I am Audi 3000. Let's save our work here. GG fam. Catch you all later.